others that are offered through your department or some other unit on campus, they want to give these to K-State students. And so automatically your pool of students is smaller. I can say one thing I do is I read the campus news all the time, and I look at the announcements of usually internal awards that students have won, and I see international students winning those awards all the time. So make sure to apply for KSN, and also make sure that you are just generally looking out for scholarships that are available on campus. Next slide. Okay, I've mentioned a couple of best places to search, and I believe Bogarga can make this PowerPoint available to you. I also have a handout that I will send her after this that has some additional scholarships on it. I have done a presentation in the past where I just have a whole bunch of scholarships listed, and it gets kind of boring because you can't click on them and see the details. And so I'm going to try not to do that this time, but I will give you a list of scholarships. So there are some things that can help make your search a little bit easier. And one of those things is to use a database that exists already. So there are some schools that have made it their mission to create databases for international students, and they've left them public. Also, there are companies that have done that. And so University of Connecticut is one that has a good list of scholarships for international students. So I will recommend that. Some of you have probably already looked at internationalscholarships.com, another one that it has a variety of scholarships listed. There is a list of scholarships for graduate students, specifically at Caltech, that you can take a look at. And these are what we would call external scholarships. And so you will hear me use the terms internal. Internal scholarships are scholarships that come from the university itself. So like all of the scholarships in KSN or something that comes from your department or from the grad college. And then there are external scholarships. And another word for external scholarships is generally portable scholarships. So if, for instance, you left K-State and you went somewhere else, with these external scholarships, the scholarship would go with you. It's not tied to you being at K-State. Anything internal, though, of course, given to you by K-State would stay here if you left K-State or if you transferred. Another place to look for external scholarships is the University of Illinois. They have a really nice database that is searchable, that has several hundred scholarships in it for graduate studies specifically. Next slide. The bounty of Pivot. So Pivot is this really big database that K-State has a membership in, and it is a database of awards. And these are awards that could work for graduate study, they can work for undergraduate study, they can work for faculty. You can get them as an early professor, you can get them if you're a postdoc. They advertise some postdoc opportunities. It is a really tremendously large database. If you go out there and Google K-State Pivot, Pivot ProQuest will pop up. And so what you will need to do is you sign up with your K-State credentials. I will mention that there are two ways to sign up. It will say sign in with your institution, and it will say, I think, sign in independently or separately or something like that. Do not sign in through your institution. Don't ask me why, but K-State has decided when you sign in for your institution, it's a little bit like as soon as you click on that, it takes you into the institution. K-State has decided not to do that. And so you just use your K-State email address to sign up for it, and then you will be able to create credentials. They ask you for your name and email address, nothing more than that at the beginning, and then they send you a confirmation email. So it's pretty straightforward. Now, when you are searching, you could, let's say you are studying agronomy. They have a big box at the top, a search box. You could just toss in the word agronomy, but you want to keep in mind, there could be awards in there for undergrads in agronomy, grad students in agronomy, the Department of Agronomy, postdocs in agronomy, K-State itself applying for agronomy awards. It's huge. And so instead of doing that, underneath that box, you will see a little set of words, and one of them says advanced search. And if you go through advanced search, it gives you a lot of different filters you can use where you can specify your citizenship. So that way you don't have to look at a bunch of scholarships that are just for American citizens. You can also specify your field of study. You can indicate whether you're a grad student or undergraduate student, and it will give you a more specific set of results. So You can use, they also have keywords you can browse, which can really help you get some good matches. So I really encourage you to use Pivot. Try it out for yourself. If you find that it is confusing in any way, I'll have contact information at the end. You can always reach out to me, and me or somebody else in my office can guide you through how to use Pivot. I would say this is especially good for graduate students. So next slide. A little more advice on searching. And I say, searching can get exhausting. I think a lot of times we give up because it's so much work, because we have to look through a lot of things that don't apply to us before we find the few that do apply to us. And that's true for everyone. So I would say you want to be creative, patient, and diligent. And so, for instance, in terms of being creative, look in a variety of places. Talk to your advisors. Look on bulletin boards. Look at your professional association. Look for scholarships that are for people from your country, and you want to look in a variety of places, because it's hard. You won't necessarily find one database that has everything in it. You also need to be patient. You may just say, I want to devote 2 hours to searching for scholarships, but that may not be enough time. So be patient, maybe search for 2 hours on Pivot and then come back and do some other searches in other places. Or I would say more commonly, if you do a search on Pivot, very frequently I've seen students get 250 scholarships that show up on a Pivot search. And if that happens, you're not going to sit there and be able to go through 250 scholarships in 2 hours. So you might need to be diligent and maybe come back to it, go through 20 scholarships, and then bookmark your place. One thing you can do when you are working in Pivot is you can set up you set up your own identity in there, and it can email you scholarships that come up that might fit you. It will email you or message you close to the deadline. And you can delete things from your search that don't work for you. So it really allows you to kind of create your own customizable search. Now, of course, they won't have things like the scholarships on KSN in there. Those are way too specific to K-State, but it's a good additional search. You want to search very thoroughly and give yourself a break. Again, it can be hard in just one session of sitting down to find everything you might be eligible. If you have people who care about you, friends and family and colleagues and assistants and supporters and faculty, use them as resources and ask them if they know about anything that might be a good fit. You might want to try to put it on your calendar, search about once a year. Sometimes new awards are added and sometimes other awards end and dates can change. And so that's a good idea in terms of regularizing your search. And you also want to do it with a calendar and maybe note like, okay, this deadline is going to be March 1st. So that means I need to start at least by February 1st to be ready. And that way it gives you time to kind of search if you have questions about the scholarship. So next slide. Now we're going to talk a little bit about applying. And so applying is the part where I can definitely assist you. I do a lot of looking at people's personal statements, and I forgot that I was supposed to get a phone call at this time. There are 5 tips for submitting a strong application. And one of the things is to really know the deadline and give yourself time to plan a strong application. I have worked in scholarships for over 25 years, and nothing makes me sadder than a student coming in with like 3 essays the day before something is due. And maybe I see a lot of mistakes, but I know I don't have enough time and the student doesn't have enough time to fix things. And these days, because of AI, these aren't grammar mistakes. These aren't spelling mistakes. These tend to be more kind of things that they didn't talk about or things that they talked too much about. And so you really need to make sure you give yourself enough time to make sure that you can put in a strong application. And that's going to vary. Some awards you might just need about a week because it's just one short essay and you can show it to a couple of people and get feedback. Others you might need more like a month because you're busy and you're going to have to parse your time out and you have several pieces to submit. Also, you might need to ask for letters of recommendation, and you can't just do that overnight. You want to make sure you read the solicitation and the website and anything in the review and selection process, probably the FAQs, until you get really a good sign of what kind of candidate they are seeking. Many scholarships will provide biographies of the candidate, and that can be a good way of kind of looking to see, or biographies of the winners, excuse me, that can be a good way to kind of get a sense like, okay, do I feel like, yeah, my resume, my record is kind of similar to this person. And this can help you kind of evaluate, is this a good one to spend my time on? You definitely look for their bios. If you're unsure about anything in the application, you can ask me, but you can also often email the people who provide the scholarship. One thing I will say is there are a lot of groups out there that are not in the business of really offering scholarships as their main profession. It's like 1/10 of what they do or 1/5 of what they do. And because of that, they're not experts in making everything perfectly clear. And so I see a lot of confusing wording on websites that often on scholarship websites where, for instance, the Rotarians are offering a scholarship. The Rotarians do a whole bunch of things. Scholarships are just one small part of it. Some aspects of what they put on their website could be a little bit confusing. So you could follow up with the Rotary website. You can also ask me because I know a little bit about the Rotary scholarships. Also make sure that you know your audience. Will these be people who are from your field of study? Will these be generalists? And you need to write accordingly. So for instance, let me go back to that agronomist. If you're writing for an audience of agronomists and you know that they all understand your research, any agronomist would understand it, then you can write in a highly specialized way about your research. But if you're an agronomist who is applying, say, for a Fulbright, and your Fulbright would take you to Brazil to do research in agronomy, your readers are going to be educated people, but not agronomy specialists. And so you're going to have to write in a different way to make sure that that audience understands. And so you just want to make sure you kind of go in knowing who your audience might be. Next slide. A few more tips. Try to directly connect your work to the funder's objectives. So what is important to them? And how do you fit their goals? So for instance, I work with a few scholarships where they're looking for people who are going to be ambassadors. So you want to use words like, I do outreach, I've been an ambassador, I'm a diplomatic person, right? Because those are words that are important. If you're applying for something that's all about sustainability and environmentalism, those are words that you're going to want to put in there and make sure that you are saying, I am the kind of person doing this sort of thing. Write about your experiences and skills and abilities in a way that explains your previous or future successes. Let them see how you think and how you act. And so it's really good to do a lot of storytelling. Sometimes we write, and sometimes I say this, we write up in the clouds. I am a diligent student. I am very hardworking. I will not let you down. Now, if I tell you all those things, I hope you'll believe me. But I bet if I told you a story about a time when I was really diligent and really hardworking, and I got something done that maybe was a lot of work that nobody expected I could do, you're going to believe me more than if I just throw those adjectives at you. So think about being a good storyteller about your own life. You want to share positive outcomes to hurdles you have faced. A lot of times people say, and there's kind of a phrase for it now, people talk about a trauma dump. Should I tell them how hard my life has been so that they'll feel sorry for me and give me the scholarship? In general, I would say no, that is not something that you want to do. However, what people really like to see is growth and the ability to tackle something difficult and come out ahead and learn valuable lessons from it. I think it gives funders faith that you'll be able to do that if you encounter difficult things in the future. So if you have encountered something difficult, and maybe it's had an impact on your transcript, you have a semester of bad grades, or you have some time that you spent away from school to deal with something complicated in your life, try to explain it. Usually you can do it very concisely and just explain what you got out of it, what you learned from it, and where that's taking you next. And I'm always happy to talk with people about how to do this if they feel they need to, but also sometimes people decide they don't need to, and I'm happy to talk about that as well. Try to say things that only you can say. So for instance, a sentence like, studying in the United States will broaden my horizons. Yes, but that is true of every international student applying for that scholarship, right? Every single person. So it's not helping you. It is not unique about you. Now, if there's something specific about broadening your horizons, like say, for instance, in your country, the field that you're going into is not very developed, but in the United States, and maybe particularly at K-State, it's highly developed. then, and it will really broaden your network and your ability to understand your field and give you an expertise you couldn't get in your home country. You can talk about that, but general stuff is that anybody could say. Just ask yourself, could anybody write this sentence? If anybody could write that sentence, it's probably not a sentence you want in your application. Explain your future goals. This can be kind of a weird thing. Sometimes they won't say, what are your future goals? But in a lot of ways, when you're applying for a scholarship, you are an investment that you're asking them to make. You're asking them to invest in who you are based on your past and also based on your plans for the future. So you want to inspire them to support you. I have a good friend who's a scholarship advisor, and he says, one of your main goals is to get readers to like you. You need you want them to like you. You also want them to be inspired by wanting you to be able to do the thing that you're talking about. And try to get some feedback while you're working on your application, sometimes more than once, and maybe sometimes from more than one source. The Writing Center is a great place. I can help you with these. Advisors can help. Lots of different people can help you. Next slide. So you found a fellowship. Now what? I'm just going to kind of go through this very quickly. Make sure you read the application from start to finish. Clarify any questions that you have. Contact recommenders if you need them. Get a copy of your transcript. Make sure you figure out if it's official or unofficial, whatever they require. One thing I will say, and I hope international students don't have this issue as much as domestic students, almost every US student I know has a lot of transfer work because they took classes from that count for college when they were in high school. And a lot of times people want to see all of your transcripts. So you need to be prepared to figure out what do they need to see if you have any transfer work. Think about what information these readers need to know about you, and look at the website and think, what is it that they need to know about me? Because you want to figure out how you're going to put that in the application. Start writing and pay attention. I would say you may not need to pay a lot of attention to word counts at the beginning. Sometimes I feel like people will say, okay, I've got 1,000 words and I've hit 1,000, and so I can't write anymore. But maybe it's just not quite there yet. You haven't really gotten everything in there that needs to be in there. Don't worry. I would much rather have a student come in with an essay that is twice as long, but they've written everything they can think of, and then I can help them figure out how to be strategic, maybe where they've repeated themselves, maybe something that's going to be more important to the readers and something that's less important that can be cut. And so don't let word counts worry you too much. Get somebody to read it through, revise. When you're revising, then you can pay more attention to page limits and word counts. And try not to submit at the last minute. A lot of times when you're submitting at the last minute, especially if you're submitting for very popular kind of thing, the website is overloaded. Also, the reason I think not to submit at the last minute is if you discover something in your last review of your application and it's 1 hour before the deadline, you may not have time to fix it. And then you're going to feel terrible. So try to get it done at least the day before, if not 2 days before. And then you can read it through, and then you'll have time to fix any last minute details, if there are any. Next slide. Here are a variety of words for students, for undergraduate students who are international. So these could work for any of them. So I'm going to say some of this with a caveat. We know right now that the situation for people on visas might be potentially a little bit fluid, and what we know about that and could vary a little bit. Always feel free to, definitely with something where there's an opportunity that will offer you the chance to work or do an internship. Feel free to check in with me about that, and definitely check in with the organization to see if that is still an option. So these are just a few different scholarships that are available. And again, we'll send this out. You'll be able to look at this. I also have a bunch on the handout I'm going to send you. So next slide. And these are some specifically for master's students that may help you out. And you'll see there's some repetition. There's some scholarships that might be available for you as an undergrad, as a master's student, or as a PhD student, and some that might just work in one area or the other. So next slide. And PhD students, yeah, PhD students, especially when you're at the writing stage or research stage, there's often a very different set of scholarships for you. And I think the good news is that the PhD stage, I think because there are fewer people in general that do PhDs, there are fewer scholarships that require you to have citizenship, though there are still some of them. Okay, and next slide. PhD fellowships in STEM. Okay, there is always more money in STEM, I will tell you that. So I'll let you kind of look through these on your own. And next slide. And which is my last slide, how you can get help applying. So you can make an appointment to explore fellowships or get advice on applying to a specific fellowship by reaching out to me, Beth Powers, at bethpowers@ksu.edu. And I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have. Any questions in the chat or otherwise?